Welcome.
Welcome, everybody.
Come on in.
Hello, hello.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Whole Brain Teaching Inclusive Best Practices for Using the Magic Circle. My name is LaKedria Lozano, and I am a gold certified whole brain teacher. I live in Ohio and teach. Primarily, I teach music, but now I own and run a school, so I'm teaching K through 12 everything. And I'm joined with three phenomenal individuals, and I will let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Melissa Ortuño. I'm a platinum certified whole brain teacher. I teach transitional kindergarten, so I teach the littles here in California. I'm so happy to be a part of this Zoom with the fabulous LaKedria, Laura, and Weston. So, Laura, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I'm Laura Forehand, Executive Board Member of Whole Brain Teaching. I also co-host the Whole Brain Teaching podcast, so check that out if you haven't. And I am going to be teaching third grade next year, so that's a big.
We're moving you up.
Moving me up, and moving me to a new school. So, how about you, Weston? You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Weston Lamb Costantino. I'm a gold certified whole brain teacher here in Wyoming, and I'm also a music teacher just like LaKedria.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have another music teacher. You feel alone sometimes, and I was so excited when Weston joined us. So this is awesome. All right. So, like I said before, we're going to be talking about some best practices when we use the magic circle in whole brain teaching. Now, if you haven't seen it yet, Nancy Stoltenberg did a wonderful session, and I believe she's done 2 now. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe she's done 2 on the magic circle. So if you want to see what that looks like in your classroom, how we do that, go back and watch her sessions. You can find all of our Facebook Lives on the Super Improver Facebook page. And I know there's a couple of different ways to get to those, but if you look there, you will find all of this information and then some. So let's get started, right? So if you haven't yet, don't walk to Amazon and get Whole Brain Teaching for Challenging Kids, the 2nd edition. I have every single one of Coach's books, and this one by far is my favorite. Mm-hmm. Fast Track is a close second, but this one is my absolute favorite. It has got so much information in it, and it goes through in detail how to utilize different parts of whole brain teaching in your classroom. He has also made it modular, so you can go pick and choose whatever chapters you need or you want to implement in your classroom. Don't try and do it all. You get to choose. You get to pick and choose. Because it will get overwhelming at times. So check that book out if you haven't. I know that there are links going on in the chat right now for the books where you can find everything, and we'll share some resources as well as we go along.
LaKedria, are you ready for Weston and I to hop into the background?
Just a moment. I'm going to have you guys do that in just a second. We're going to get to our first question. This is very interactive. This is interactive. So if you are in the chat watching live, I would love for you to participate as you can in this. I always like to ask this question in all of my sessions. So if you've been to some of them, I'm sorry, it's redundant, but I really love the answers that I get from teachers. So why is inclusion important? Why is inclusion important? So if you're watching live, please go ahead and type your answer in the chat. I would love to pick some out. And Laura, Weston, and Melissa, if you have your answers, that would be amazing as well. I would love to hear what you guys think about inclusion in the classroom.
Well, mine, inclusion is important because we want to all work together. Inclusion is important so that we can all work together. And Weston typed his. Inclusion is important because I am here to teach all, capital ALL, students.
So all children, Facebook users, so all children can learn together. I like that. Learn from one another, yes, because we do. And as teachers, learn from our students as well. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you. Thank you all for participating in that. I just like to ask because there's not a really good definition out there that I love. So I just love hearing from teachers. What's your thoughts on inclusion? Because again, and I'll say this probably in every session, oftentimes when we're planning for a year, we don't plan for the situations that end up in our classroom because we don't know what we're going to walk into or who's going to come into our classroom. So sometimes inclusion is an afterthought. And I always say, bring it to the front of your brain so that it's on your mind as you're going about your school year, as you're going about your planning.
Right. LaKedria, would you like to see the other two? We have all children deserve an education. So totally goes with what you were just seeing. All children deserve an education. And inclusion is important because all students should feel welcome and be able to learn.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all. Thank you for doing that. All right. Well, Melissa and Weston are going to be producing in the background and we'll bring them back at the end. And Laura and I are going to be up in the front row kind of doing and demonstrating things. Okay. So we have our basic whole brain teaching magic circle. Right. So, Laura, will you be my student? I'm going to demonstrate what this looks like in your classroom. We're just going to do a lap around the circle.
Sure.
All right. Hey, 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 class.
Hey, 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 yes.
Thank you, class.
You're welcome.
Mere words.
Mere words.
Today. Right now. We're talking about inclusion.
We're talking about inclusion.
Right now, we're talking about inclusion.
Right now, we're talking about inclusion.
Teach.
Okay. Today, right now, we're talking about inclusion. Today, right this minute, we are talking about inclusion.
Hey, class.
Hey, yes.
So thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
That is the magic circle, how it would look, what that would actually look like in your classroom. So what we're going to do now is break it down and kind of give you some tips and tricks for some situations that may come up. So, but the first thing I want to do before we get into any of that is go over some important points. Laura mentioned this yesterday and I loved it. So I said, I'm going to keep this. I love what she said. We should always try to be inclusive in our classrooms and never exclusive. So if we find ourselves excluding a group or excluding an individual, and it's not intentional. I know it's not intentional, right? It's not intentional, but it happens. We need to change our plans really quick because we want to make sure that all of our students are welcomed and they feel safe, they want to learn, and they have a place in our classroom, and they need to know that. Okay, so always be inclusive, not exclusive. And if you find yourself being exclusive, unintentionally, change your plans up. Change up your plans. The next point I want to make is that in whole brain teaching, there's, we're firing all parts of our brain. So that's visual, that's motor, that's talking, all of that. You have students who are nonverbal, okay? Nonverbal does not equal non-communicative, okay? Nonverbal students can understand what you're saying. They can communicate back to you. They can do all of that. They may not speak all of the time, but they can do all of these other things that we can do as people who are, speaking and doing all of that. So make sure that your forms of communication with your students, if they use sign language, it's communication. If they have an AAC device where they're pressing the buttons and their, the computer or tablet is talking for them, that is communication. If they have a PIX board or PEX board, which are pictures that you can get and, you're able to see what a child wants, that is also communication. All of these forms of communication are valid. So when we are using whole brain teaching, you have all of these forms of communication, and they're all valid and acceptable, and we need to be aware of what might come into our classroom. So Laura, will you summarize just the point about communication?
Yes, thank you, LaKedria, because this really touches my heart a lot. I have a grandson who is nonverbal, and we need to not equate nonverbal with not understanding, because they can understand us. And whatever device that they choose to use to communicate with us, as you said, LaKedria, is absolutely 100% valid. So I'm so grateful that you made that point.
Thanks, Laura. All right, so let's get into the magic circle. So the first part of the magic circle is our attention getter, and it's the class yes. So when I say class, the students say yes. So class yes, right? So what we want to do sometimes is that no matter what grade a student is in or how old a student is, if they have challenges processing different information, you're going to want to micro-step this process. Okay, so I know that Sarah Tillinghast and Melissa Artuno, the littles, have a process for micro-stepping this. So it's the same process. We're going to use that same micro-step process. So we are going to teach the 3 expectations that we have when we say class. Okay, the first one is stop what you're doing. The second one is find the speaker. And I say find the speaker because if you have a blind student, they're not going to look at the speaker. They're going to turn their head in the direction that the sound is coming from. Okay. And then the final step is to fold your hands. Or I always say put your hands in a position where they're not going to get in trouble. So that might be on your lap. That might be on your desk. If the student has to do something else and can't physically fold their hands, that's okay too. So Laura, let's just practice the micro step process of stopping what we are doing. So can you pretend to teach or to talk or to do whatever? And when I say class, all you're going to do is stop what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if you know, but like this weekend, I'm so excited because
hey,
I'm going
class.
Hey, yes.
Okay, so she stopped what she was doing, okay? And then the second thing she did was find the direction of the speaker. I don't like to say focus on the speaker. I don't like to say look at the speaker. Find the direction of the speaker, focus your attention on the speaker. So that was the second thing she did. And the last thing she did was folded her hands. So we're going to teach that explicitly, and we're going to go through step by step by step, probably many times to get that so that they know that this is how we do it. So a lot of repetition. So the first thing we want to do is micro-step this process. The second thing we want to do is repeat, repeat, repeat. Okay. And then we want to use variety. Whole brain teaching is full of variety, and we want to make sure we keep that. However, you have students that process things differently. So it's however I say class, you say yes. Sometimes we get silly and we want to be silly. That's okay. And we do dances and different things like that. So if I'm like, hey, 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 class, it might take someone a minute to process that. So we want to make sure we're giving ample time for those things. So here we go. So here's that point. So micro-step the process and use those visuals. So if you see, I have the visuals, stop sign, find the speaker, and then I have the hands folded. Use those visuals as you need. Laura, let's just practice that one more time with real slow. Yo, yo, class.
Yo, yo, yes.
Okay, so I used a little bit of variety, took it slow, and she was able to pick that up. So give your students the processing time. All right, here we go. The next part is our manners. Thank you and you're welcome. The only thing I have about this part of our magic circle is teach the gesture. So we want to put our hands over our heart when we say thank you, and it's the exact same gesture when we say you're welcome. So thank you, you're welcome. And then the only other thing is model manners all day long. Use them all day. It's needed. Coach talks about how just using manners makes everyone smile, and it trickles down from the classroom to specials to the cafeteria to the crossing guard to the janitor. It trickles down, and it's so amazing when our students use manners. Do you have anything to add, Laura, on that? Because I know that also touches your heart.
Yes. Yes, I love manners. And you said it well. Model, model, model. The more we model for our students, instead of saying, you need to say thank you, you need to say you're welcome. If we're modeling that, then our kids are going to pick up on it. And you're exactly right. My kids last year were the kindest kids to our cafeteria staff because they always said, thank you for fixing our lunch. Have a great day. It just melted my heart every time. So model, model, model. I love that point.
Love it. All right. So let's get into the next part. And this is the part that a lot of us whole brain teachers, and I see a lot of new whole brain teachers coming in, and they struggle with the mirror words and gestures. So let's talk about it. All right. So let me hide that. There we go. All right. So our mirror words. Okay. So when I say mirror words, you say mirror words. Mirror words.
Mirror words.
So again, this can have variety in it too. They can be smaller mirrors. Mirror words.
Mirror words.
So you can change your voice. You can change the way you're doing things. Again, give them processing time. Now, what do we do with our mirror words? This is our direct instruction part of the game. Okay, part of our cycle. This is when we're going to teach something. Okay, so you want to make sure though that you can describe the gesture you are using. So be descriptive about the gesture. So if I were teaching, I'm a music teacher, so I'm going to use melody as an example. If I am teaching melody, I'm going to say, okay, everybody, show me your microphone. Show me your pretend microphone in your hand. And now we're going to pretend like we're singing on American Idol. And that is our gesture for melody. So I'm able to really quickly describe that gesture. So when I say mirror words, you say mirror words. Mirror words.
Mirror words.
Melody.
Melody
is the tune of a song.
Is the tune of a song.
Melody.
Melody
is the tune of a song.
Is the tune of a song.
Okay, so that is how mirror words would look like, but I described the gesture before I ever said mirror words, okay? Now, today, Sarah Metter just did a wonderful session on gestures. And if you haven't seen that one, run. It's such a good presentation. I go watch her every year because that's one of my favorite ones that she does. She does an incredible presentation on how to use gestures and what they are. The second thing I want to say is consider only using memory gestures. So she says there is a difference between memory gestures and social gestures. Us K through 4 folks, we're going to use a lot of social gestures just to keep the engagement up, right? We're talking with our hands, we're moving around, we gesture a lot. Usually in the upper grades though, that doesn't happen, and we're only focused on the gesture that is related to the content that we're teaching. So they're memory gestures. So that melody, that microphone is going to stay in your memory. Okay, so that's melody. Show me your gesture for melody. There we go. I see everyone's microphones up. So we all know that that's the gesture for melody. I don't have to say anything else, and it's not overloading a student. It's not too much and too busy for a student. Okay, and then if you haven't seen it yet, we have been using mirror variations. So the first variation, and we use it on Zoom a lot, is silent mirrors. So Laura has been doing silent mirrors with me. Okay, so the student does, or the teacher talks, and the student only gestures. That's all they're doing. They are modeling, not talking back. Okay, so silent mirrors. Okay, melody is the tune of a song. So they're just gesturing. Okay, so this is handy if you have a class who can't handle too much noise or can't handle the busyness of mirror words. Okay. The next one we have is our magic mirrors. So we're going to pull our rabbit out of our hat and say, magic mirrors, whoop. And this is where the teacher is talking and the student is just making up a gestures. So Laura, let's try magic mirrors.
Perfect.
Magic mirrors, whoop.
Magic mirrors, whoop.
Okay. We're learning about melody today, and melody is the tune of a song like Happy Birthday or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Mirrors off. I always forget to turn my mirrors off. So that is magic mirrors. So if your class, members of your class, and you know this about your class, if they have a problem with things that are too busy or too loud, these are some options that when you are delivering instruction, you can use because everybody's going to take that instruction in. So that's our direct instruction part of the game. So here's our little banner here just to, describe your gestures. Use more memory gestures than social gestures to keep it less busy, and then utilize the mirror variations in your classroom. It keeps it keeps the variety going, and again, it's a lot less busy for some of your students that might struggle with that. All right, moving on to teach okay. So for me, and this is my opinion, you guys might have other opinions, the teach okay part of this is the most overwhelming part of the cycle. Because when you normally do teach okay and you have a class turning to their partner, their coffee cup, whatever, everyone is speaking at the same time. And oh my goodness, and they're gesturing at the same time. And oh my goodness, even I as a teacher look around and go, this is loud, this is busy, it overwhelms me. So I can't imagine a kid that struggles with some sensory issues, kind of like just being like, whoa, this is way, way too much. Okay, so you have to remember in whole brain teaching, you as the teacher set the tone for your mirror words, your teach okays. You set the tone, you set the bar for the energy level. Okay, so you also have to know your students. If you know you have a classroom full of people that, again, can't handle the busyness, these are some things that you can do. Again, you set the tone. So it might not be teach. It might not be that loud and that forceful. It might be teach. Okay, and Laura, we're gonna let's do some variations of teach okay where you set the tone. So I'm gonna switch roles with you. Can you be the teacher and I'll be your student?
Yes. You just want me to do teach okays?
Yes, let's just do
yeah. Perfect. So one that I really like is where I tap my 2 pointer fingers really quietly and I go, teach.
And I would do the same. Okay. And you see how she's whispering? She's using that whisper voice. Mm-hmm. That's how everyone in the class would be. And then they would turn to their neighbor and whisper whatever it was she was doing. All right. Can you give me another one, Laura? Let's do it.
Sure. I might do 2 claps, 2 snaps, teach.
And then that's a little okay. And then I would turn to my partner, coffee cup, whatever, and I would teach. So that's a little like medium, your class can handle that. Let's do one more.
Okay. Let's see. I think I'm going to just pat my knees quietly. Teach.
And I'll pat my knees and I'll say, okay. And again, that's quiet. That's not as loud. You set the tone. You set the volume. You control. Coach says you control the game. The game does not control you. That is evident here. So again, teach okay. And you'll want to micro step this process as well, because a lot of times we're not quick about turning to our neighbor. So you'll want to go really slow and say, okay, when I say teach, you say, okay, we're going to turn fast or slow or whatever to our partners, our coffee cups, whatever, and teach them whatever that chunk was. Okay. So I'm kind of moving fast and I hope that's okay. I hope everybody's getting it. Please put your questions in the chat. And then the steps to do the Teach OK are outlined in Coach's book on page 49. So if you want to know and read and go through the steps of actually teaching that, it's on that page 49 of the book. All right. And then the one thing I want to talk about too is our pacing with our Teach OK. So as you all know, in whole brain teaching, we teach our lessons in chunks, and those chunks are about 30 to 60 seconds of material. Okay. Some students may need that chunk of information a lot shorter. They can't handle a minute of information. They can't handle 30 seconds of information. They might need 10 to 15 seconds of information, be able to teach it, and then come back and get the other parts. Specifically with students with ADHD, I'm finding, or other processing disorders, auditory processing and different things like that. I'm finding that I have to deliver my lesson chunks at about 10 to 15 seconds. And it takes a little bit longer, but that is a really good way for those students that struggle with that to get that information that you are trying to convey. And then we also, when we deliver our whole brain teaching lessons, we make a point, we review that point, and then we add a point on. You might want to consider, for these type of students, just reviewing point by point by point, because they're not going to remember the first point and then adding on to the second point. So you might want to just consider, let's just review things point by point by point, right? And then my last thing is here, don't be afraid to move slow. Take your lessons very slow with some of these students. It's okay. It's okay if you don't get through the whole thing in a day. It is okay, I promise. And if you have an admin telling you differently, shut your door and teach. And if you have a group of students that are struggling, and they're not grasping a concept, you can grab them in a small group and very quickly, again, deliver this lesson or whatever the lesson was in small chunks. It might have to be 5-second chunks. Don't be afraid of that. It's really okay. Or, working one-on-one with that student. Don't be afraid to work one-on-one, and so that they get all of that content. So there is my pacing. So I wanted to point that out. Laura, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the thing I love the most about the Teach OK and the pacing that you're talking about is that it gives me a chance as a teacher to kind of walk around the room, and that's when you can figure out, do they have it? And if they don't have it, that's when you can, like you said, pull them into that small group or work with them one-on-one. So I think this is a great time to kind of evaluate, and it can also help you decide maybe those chunks do need to be a little bit smaller. Maybe they do need to be 5 seconds. So I love that part of the Teach OK is when they're teaching each other, we have a chance to assess our students.
Thank you so much, Laura. So that was the end of the magic circle. So that's the Teach OK, and then you would go back to the class, yes. So if you have any questions, like I said, please put them in the chat. Melissa or Weston, are there any questions in the chat currently that we can highlight? Maybe, and I can... you can help answer. I just wanted to do a quick, sometimes I get frequently asked questions. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Sometimes I get frequently asked questions about whole brain teaching. And one of the bigger ones I get is, what about American Sign Language, British Sign Language? What about sign language? Why are we using gestures? Why are we not using ASL? For a couple of different reasons. Whole brain teaching goes all around the world, so not everybody uses like American Sign Language. So that's one. I know that was one of the big reasons. The other reason is that American Sign Language is a communicative tool. Okay, they're using signs to communicate. We are using our gestures to lock a concept in our students' brains. Okay, so that's the difference between our gestures and ASL. So if you are teaching ASL in your classroom or British language, whatever sign language you are teaching, please do that, because they should learn how to communicate with each other. But you can use whole brain teaching gestures in conjunction with ASL, British Sign Language, etc. Your kids will know the difference. But just know that American Sign Language, British Sign, that is for communication. Our gestures are helping our students lock a concept into their brains. So again, when you think of melody, if I say melody, everybody should be pulling out that microphone, right? You remember that, oh, that's the microphone. I got it. Cool. Okay. Is this sensory overload? Absolutely yes. 100% yes. And if you struggle with sensory overload, again, you set the tone. You are the teacher, you set the tone, you run your classroom. So if you struggle with sensory overload and all of that, you set the tone for these students. You're going to help yourself, you're going to help your students. So just remember that. And keep an eye on your students who, struggle with change, struggle with variety, different things like that. You got to know your students. And then the last question I get is, I'm a teacher with a chronic illness or a disability. Can I still use whole brain teaching? Absolutely, 100% yes. As I said, for students, we have to be intentional about planning how we're going to work and, make our classroom accessible for our students. You got to do the same thing for yourself. You got to make sure you know what you need as a person to function. And again, you set the bar, you set the tone, be intentional, ask for help. We are all here. We're all here for you. All right, so I'm going to bring Weston and Melissa back on. And if there were any questions,
there was one talking about pacing lessons with the pacing lesson chunks. Carla was wondering about, if I'm teaching a math lesson, which is about 10 minutes, would you do this strategy? And I'm assuming she's talking about breaking that into the lesson chunks.
Absolutely. Break it up. You can absolutely break up that lesson. If you were doing a lesson on addition and you were first explaining what an addition sign is, that's a chunk. And then if you were explaining the definition of addition, that's another chunk, etc. So yes, absolutely. And if you guys want to jump in, that's awesome too.
Yeah, you want to chunk it. That is, like LaKedria was saying, one of the most tricky parts, because as Coach says, what's our main conundrum? How do we talk less and teach more? Talking less is hard. And when we're talking about being inclusive, we need to talk even less than less sometimes. And that's a tricky thing. So there are going to be some more sessions specifically about lesson design and some of the different things. Like, I know the power picks are something that help me to be quiet and do the teach okays and things like that. So there's a lot of different resources that we have. And then I'm going to follow up to that one. And so you only have 2 points in your lesson or 2 concepts. You're still chunking and doing a lot more teach okay and repeating. And you probably, in a 10-minute lesson, can break it up more than you think, or they're going to be doing practices, so you're not talking. That, I don't know, Laura, if you teach some of the second and third, or what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it takes practice. And that's okay. I know when I first started using whole brain teaching, I would practice my lessons in front of the mirror to see, am I talking too long? And that's the other thing, when you do the teach okay and you're monitoring and your kids are looking like, I don't remember what I'm supposed to say, or I'm not sure what that point was, that's your time to call them back. I mean, that's happened to me before. That just means I gave them way too much information and I need to go back and I need to chunk it even more. So, that's just a "you're so cool" moment. And that's not a failure of any kind, because we all have to learn how to talk less, and let our kiddos teach a little bit more. So we know how to chunk those lessons.
Yeah, and that's student-powered classroom. So when the students are leading lessons, that's like the greatest thing ever. So you hand over the reins to your students. They'll enjoy that, I promise, and it's really good for them.
and I'm not sure which Facebook user, because I'm back on StreamYard, but this is, he or she practices in the shower, in the car, on the way to school. So there's always time for us to practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love these summer Zooms so much, is getting to practice with all my friends.
Yes.
Right.
And
Because we're all
Weston, I think those were the main ones. And Weston, 20 finger woo to you for being the chat guru. You guys have not just the main points, but all the wonderful key things from all these slides right in the chat for you. Oh, so thank you, Weston, for that.
You're welcome. I was just going to add a quote from Coach's new book that I absolutely love, talking about the practicing in the shower, in the car. He says the less work you do outside of class, the more work your class will be. And I think that is huge. Teaching is not easy. The more work we're going to do, the better our class will go.
Yes.
And that's a hard one, because you want to balance. Like, we don't want to be spending all our time on the classroom things. You need to be balanced too. But it is definitely if you just walk in and like, yay, I haven't thought about school at all, not going to work. I know we all can speak to that.
I saw a question pop up from Facebook user. So one cycle 4 or 5 times, and then before breaking into small groups. Oh, so one cycle 4 or 5 times. Yes, 4 or 5 times
going through the cycle. Oh.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all again for being here. If there are any questions, you can throw them in the comments. And if you are watching the replay and you have questions, please put them in the comments. We will go back and answer them. And until then, we will see you all soon. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, Joseph, great job. He knows how valuable this is. Good to see you.
All right.